Since the Hawks championship in 1958, the Hawks became a meddling team in St. Louis. But by the mid 1960s, the two arenas that the Hawks called home, well, one was starting to become stale as bread, left open on the kitchen counter, and the other one was occupied with another team from a totally different sport. But Hawks owner Ben Kerner saw that the team was struggling in ticket sales in St. Louis. Despite some of the team's success post the 1958 finals win, from 1958 to 1961, the Hawks saw over an average of 8,000 fans. By 1967, that number dropped to 6,000 fans. Even when the team started out the season that year 16-1 in the 1967-68 season, Kerner was desperate. He even thought about having the team play games in Miami, but that wouldn't have worked. So what was next? What was next? He didn't know. It seemed like everything went downhill since Hawks legend Bob Pettit retired from the NBA in 1965. But then again, the Hawks had to fight for the attention of the St. Louis Cardinals baseball and St. Louis Blues hockey, which was also playing in the St. Louis arena. And not to reference again, sharing arenas with the St. Louis Blues, or having the option of having a new arena built. So, what was next? Well, Kerner attempted to sell the team in 1967, but quickly took it off the market. Kerner also thought playoff success would put the butts in seats, but the Hawks were knocked out of the playoffs early on in 1968. So, on May 3rd, 1968, he put the team up for sale, and then it was sold. The Hawks were sold to Tom Cousins and former governor of Georgia, Carl Sanders, for $3.5 million. And the duo of Cousins and Sanders had no plans of keeping the team in Missouri. With the additions of new sports teams, like the Atlanta Braves, like the Hawks moved from Milwaukee in 1965, like the Braves, and the Falcons, who started as a team in 1965 as well, Atlanta will become a new hotspot for sports, and the Hawks would just fit in fine in hot Atlanta.
To Middleton. Middleton puts up the jumper, puts it in! Chris Middleton, another clutch shot on these.
On the intersection of 10th Street and Fowler, on the northeast end of Georgia Tech's campus, stands the Hank McCamish Pavilion, aka the Alexander Memorial Coliseum. Nicknamed the Thriller Dome, opened on November 30th, 1956. A dorm arena, of course, was originally home to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and it still is to this day. The arena sat 6,600 visitors, but renovations in over its 70 years of existence, and now sits over 8,000. Now, the dome is unique for not installing any pillars that can obstruct views inside. Well, the Atlanta Hawks, this was their first home, which they played from 1968 to 1972. And within its walls for 4 seasons, the Hawks would lose to the Los Angeles Lakers in the division finals in 1969, 1970 as well, losing to the Knicks in 5 games in 1971, and their rivals in the Celtics in 6 games in the conference semifinals in 1972. The Hawks were out of the Alexander Memorial Coliseum for their new home, which was being built during the time, the Army. Now, the Hawks would return for 2 seasons from 1997 to 1999, while their current arena was under construction, to the Memorial Coliseum. As for the Alexander Memorial Coliseum, the arena went under several renovations, like I mentioned before. The biggest is when it closed on March 6, 2011, before opening on November 9th, 2012. The new renovation will rack up $45 million and will be renamed the Hank McCamish Pavilion. With the new renovation, the seating bowl was reconstructed, adding club seating, an upper balcony, and an expansion to the concourse and outside areas. And it's still, of course, still today, which I mentioned earlier. Now, for the next home of the Atlanta Hawks, the Army, or the Army Coliseum. is where the good times. Okay, I guess. The good times began in Atlanta. When new owners Tom Cousins and Carl Sanders purchased the Hawks, they quickly went into the planning stages to build a new arena near the unused Railroad Gulch in downtown Atlanta. The plan, a $17 million indoor arena with a capacity of 16,500, named the Army, began construction in the spring of 1971 and was completed in the fall of 1972. The Army Coliseum opened in the same year, and the Hawks played their first game in the arena on October 15, 1972 versus the New York Knicks, a victory for the Hawks behind Lou Hudson's 32 points. And did I forget that the late great Pistol Pete was on the team at this time, only playing for the Hawks from 1970 to 1974, but heading to the New Orleans Jazz? Now, the Army was considered a marvel because the innovative roof, seating, and structural designs. From above, people called the Army an egg crate or a rusty raffle iron for its space room roof. Did I even say that right? Anyways, it looked like a damn rusty waffle iron and an egg crate, whatever one you choose. It was weird for its space frame roof. Yeah, got tongue twisted. But anyways, the Hawks were playing the Army until 1997. The Army was part of the Army complex, which consisted of the arena, office building, and once had America's first indoor theme park that opened in 1976 called the World of Sid Martin. What? I wrote this whole script and didn't even sound right. I guess it don't sound right saying it out loud. Well, anyways, it was an indoor theme park, but it was shut down within months. There was also a movie theater within the complex. Now, the complex is now known as the CNN Center, since CNN moved its headquarters to an office building in the mid-1980s. The Hawks did have to share the arena with the NHL Atlanta Flames from opening day until 1980, when the Flames would move to Calgary and become the Calgary Flames after 1980. The Army did host in 1986 the WBA lightweight heavyweight bout between Evander Holyfield and champion Dwight Muhammad Kwai, a fight that ended in a split decision. The fight is also considered one of the greatest fights in boxing history. I have to agree. The Army also hosted the NCAA Final Four in 1977, won by Marquette University over UNC. The next year, the Army hosted the 1978 NBA All-Star Game, won by the East. Also, the 1993 Women's Final Four for basketball and volleyball matches for the 1996 Summer Olympics. Plus, the 1988 Democratic National Convention. But the Army tenure as home for the Hawks will come close to an end very soon. Why? Here's why. There was a problem with the Army. The designers did not take into account that the Atlanta's climate, which is a humid subtropical climate, that would cause problems for the structure, and the roof will suffer water leakage. Plus, the arena had limited luxury boxes, no club level, unlike the other arenas that were popping around this time. New arenas had more boxes, club levels, plus Atlanta wanted to attract another NHL team. But the NHL team deemed the Army unsuitable for hockey, even as a temporary facility. Now, the Army would never host the NBA Finals or even an Eastern Conference or Western Conference Finals during the Hawks' tenure inside the arena. Matter of fact, the Hawks would return to the conference finals up until 2015. After the Hawks left in 1997, the arena was shut down. The last game in the Army was a game the Hawks played against the Chicago Bulls in the 97 playoffs. The Hawks lost the game, lost the series in 5 in the semifinals, and of course the Bulls wouldn't win at all. On that Hawks team was Dikembe Mutombo, Steve Smith, Christian Laettner, and Mookie Blaylock. Due to his closeness to the CNN Center, the Georgia World Congress Center, and the SEC District Station, they had to be careful on the deconstruction of the Army. I think they ended up blowing it sky high. Now, the only surviving piece of the Army is the scoreboard, now rests in its replacement. But during the Hawks' tenure in the Army, the world saw the rise of Dominique Wilkins, probably one of the best small forwards and dunkers in NBA history. Similar, like most of the older franchises that I have covered so far in this series, Hawks basketball was outsourced to a different city. Now, during this time, the team's time in the Army, they did something a little bit different for the Atlanta Hawks. They moved the Atlanta Hawks for 12 games to New Orleans, Louisiana. The Hawks played at the Lakefront Arena from 1984 to 1985 season, a season in which the Hawks did not make the playoffs, but Larry Bird put 60 on the Hawks' head, which was a career high for Larry Bird on March 12, 1985. I also think it's a single game career high for a Boston Celtics player, which I think was broken that game once Kevin McHale had it before Larry Bird got it. And in this game, I just recently watched this game. A side note, Larry Bird put on a show, even causing the Atlanta Hawks players to celebrate him putting on the show. That's how you know you're good. Now, why did the Hawks play in New Orleans for 12 games that were considered home games? Well, it's called a boost of sagging attendance and generating revenue. A promoter named Barry Mendelson paid the team $1.2 million to play at the Lakefront Arena for 12 games. Keep in mind that shortly after the Jazz left New Orleans for Utah, in which the Hawks played their last game in New Orleans against the Jazz. Ironic. Located on the University of New Orleans campus, the 8,933 seat multi-purpose arena first opened on November 1st, 1983, with Lionel Richie performing for 2 nights. Now, the Lakefront Arena is home to the New Orleans Privateers men's and women's basketball team. Now, after the move from the Army, the Hawks had to play somewhere. Meanwhile, a replacement home for the Hawks was on the horizon. But in the meantime, the Hawks played 2 years in the Georgia Dome. Now, some of us might remember, it hasn't been that long ago, that the Georgia Dome was once home to the Atlanta Falcons from 1992 to 2016. When the dome was demolished, I always wondered why. It really all that old at the time. Well, the dome has now been replaced with a hotel. But the Georgia Dome was part of the Georgia World Congress Center Convention Center, not too far away from the Army. While using the football dome as a home, the Hawks set a then NBA single game attendance record at 62,046 fans to see Michael Jordan. And the Hawks got their ass whooped in that game. Now, the Hawks did split between the Alexander and the Georgia Dome. Let's not forget that. But the Hawks played their final home game in the Georgia Dome on May 20th, 1999 against the New York Knicks in the L. Now for the finale. The Atlanta Hawks' current owner at the time, Ted Turner, wanted an NHL hockey team in the city. But the original team packed its bags for Canada, which I mentioned earlier. A new arena was proposed, the location on the lot of the Army, so therefore the destruction of the Army was on the docket. On June 5th, 1997, construction began on the former Army lot. The new arena opening on September 18th, 1999 for a cost of $213.5 million. The naming rights from Phillips, who purchased the naming rights for $185 million for 20 years, hence the Phillips Arena was born. Now, the Hawks did have to share the new arena with the new NHL team, the Atlanta Thrashers, which only lasted until 2011, when the Thrashers left Atlanta for Canada, particularly Winnipeg, becoming the Winnipeg Jets. Some reason, there's a couple of cities that just don't fit hockey. And I think Atlanta is one of them. I think the other is Phoenix. I could be wrong. But it seems like Atlanta has a problem with hockey teams going to Canada. Anyways, the Phillips Arena can fit over 17,000 for basketball and over 18,000 for concerts. The largest crowd for a basketball game was the Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals first round against the Celtics, a game that the Hawks won by a final score 103-100. But the Hawks would lose that series. The attendance for Game 6 was at 20,425. Now, the arena includes 92 luxury suites, 9 party suites, and 1,866 club seats, a big upgrade from the Omni. The club seats and luxury box are aligned slowly along one side of the playing surface and the general admission seating among the other sides of the arena. The setup was later inspired for other stadiums arenas such as Ford Field in Detroit, Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California, home of the 49ers. Now, the luxury boxes and club seats are located in the belly of the arena, causing the upper deck to 2 to 4 stories higher than usual, down to have the bulk of the seats closer to the floor. But in the 2017-18 renovations, some of the upper levels of the suite were removed to install more premium seating throughout the arena. The arena is unique because of its interior, probably one of the better facial designs for arenas in the NBA. On the outside, the angle steel columns that support the roof that face downtown that spell out Atlanta. I always thought that was cool. It kind of reminds me of the south side of the Fiserv Forum, with the outside columns resembling a basketball net. Now, the side facing the Georgia World Congress Center originally spelled out CNN, but since changed to accommodate a sports bar. Other tenants in the past for the Phillips Arena, aka State Farm Arena, which we'll get to soon, have been the AFL Georgia Force, the Atlanta Dream, who now play in the Gateway Center Arena in College Park. The Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets had a stint in the arena in 2011 because of the reconstruction of the McCamish Pavilion. Now, when the Hawks first began to play in the Phillips Arena, there was absolutely trash water. Absolutely hot trash water for most of the early 2000s up into 2008, when they got Joe Johnson, Al Horford, and Josh Smith, and many others. From that year on forward, the Hawks became a playoff contender for most of the 2010s, and a little bit into this current decade, but have been subpar since the 22-23 season. The Phillips Arena, now known as the State Farm Arena, has only hosted 2 Eastern Conference Finals. The Hawks getting dusted by the Phony Goat in 2015, and then losing in 6 games in 2021 to the Milwaukee Bucks. And if you want to know the Hawks' record in Atlanta, it's actually not good. It's actually below 500. Now, the arena did host 2 All-Star games in 2003, which would be Jordan's last All-Star game ever. The West winning 155-145, Kevin Garnett winning MVP. In 2021, to a limited crowd, only people with special invites could attend due to the VID protocols, if you know what I mean by VID. And also was no All-Star Saturday. The 3-point contest was moved to Sunday before the game, and the dunk contest was moved to halftime of the All-Star game. They also had to install artificial noise for this game. But Team LeBron would win 170-150 over Team Durant behind a perfect 16 for 16 shooting and 35 points by Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's won MVP, setting the All-Star record for the most attempts without a miss, surpassing Hal Greer's 8 for 8 in 1968. This also will be Mal Horford's last call for an All-Star game. And of course, like the Army, and never held an NBA Finals series. It's about 70 years since the Hawks were in the NBA Finals, and sometimes I forget they even won that ring with Bob Pennant. Other events hosted in the State Farm Arena: the 56th edition of the NHL All-Star Game in 2008. After the arena was supposed to host the 2004 NHL All-Star Game, but was voided because of the lockout that season. It also hosted the WNBA Finals, which the Dream lost. NCAA basketball tournaments at the Division II and III levels as an undercard events prior to the Final Four, taking place in the Georgia Dome back in 2013 to celebrate the 75th edition of the NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Championship. Other events like playing host to the 2011 WWE Hall of Fame introduction ceremony and other wrestling events, and of course MMA matches, most recently of 2025. plus various concerts per usual, as every NBA arena has concerts. Now, I think out of all the NBA arenas, I haven't covered all of them yet, I think the State Farm is probably one of the better looking arenas in the league. But that's just my opinion.